Alright, NET-215, network security. A brief overview of what we talked about. We reviewed the concept of network security, and we talked about the edge again. Edge or perimeter router. Sometimes these are combined as one, firewall and those, or a lot of times you'd have a router, a firewall off of that. So I looked at the campus example, hooked out to the untrusted area, and we have a firewall in here, and it goes over to the IT area. Alright. Principles, we reviewed confidentiality, who should see what data, integrity, quality of data, and of course we have to make the data available. So then, data, what is of value? The data, what is the value of the data? And that can vary a lot in a lot of different ways in terms of what you do with your data. And we went through this again. Is there a threat? Is there somebody or something that can carry out the threat, and how vulnerable are you to that happening? That gives us our risk. We can either accept it, transfer it, or do some type of countermeasure. Mitigate it would be a really good word to put with that. Mitigate it. Okay? The data can be in various states. Transit while it's moving, where it's stored, while it's being processed. And we just saw the issue with the checkouts at retail stores, a little virus in there monitoring the information as it's being checked out. So the data was vulnerable during processing. We're processing the data, we already have it off the device, we don't have it stored, we're not really transferring it right now, it's being processed. The debit card number and so forth is being processed, that information is being gathered, and then somehow taken out of the network. Policy, guidelines, and standards. Policy, remember we said a guideline is something we should follow, a policy we must follow, and there are certain standards everybody should follow and do. You need a procedure in order to implement policies and guidelines and standards. Okay, you need procedures, you need to teach people. Again, people are key in the whole thing, and then products and devices. You can't expect products and devices to be a cure-all, because the bad guys also have the same products and devices. Okay, so we have to read a lot on these different items in order to secure. Alright. We talked a little bit about the situation here at NIACC. We have the NIACC part of the network, and we have the IT part of the network. Edge router, NIACC's edge router. NIACC actually has a couple connections out into public area, or untrusted, or however you want it. NIACC has a firewall here. We talked about that. On the IT side, this router acts as the firewall. And then we went through an exercise today where we talked about transporting a message between two locations. We did some work with Diffie-Hellman. For example, we set up a public information. Then I gave each of the groups private key, private piece of information, a number, which in this scenario filled in right here in the formula. And so then we calculated the other piece of public information, and so they came up with a couple of numbers. So we had a number on each side, and then they exchange those two numbers with the public information. Okay, so you get that exchange. Then perform the operation again using the new base and the same private number, they came up with a number, and that number could be then their shared key. It could be their shared key. And they did that, and they made it work. And then we talked about it. We talked about the idea of public and private. We can take a message, we can encrypt it with a public key, with their public key, and when it gets there, they can decrypt it with their private key. We can take the message and make it smaller and hash it. Now we have a hashed message from there, and then we can encrypt it with our private key, send it over. Now they have this small piece of hashed information, and they have the original message. They take the original message, decrypt it, and then hash it. And now they have a hash. And in order to compare those, they decrypt this with the public key. The public key from over here. Compare the hashes. If the hashes match, two things must have occurred. It had to be this person that sent it, and nothing could have happened to the data in transit. Alright, so it was a nice little example. Then we worked on labs. Moving forward, we have a lot of things to finish up in Chapter 2, and we'll be doing that on Tuesday. Finish up the labs, and they should be working on the labs outside of classroom. They should be using their remote access to come in and work on the labs. That's it.